What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the third episode of the Love Jesus podcast. I'm your host, Drew Chandler. And yeah, man, tonight we have a fun show. Well, I shouldn't say a fun show. We have a very eventful show. We're going to be talking about a few different things. We are sadly talking about the schism that is now within the Catholic Church. Today, the news came out that Pope Leo issued an excommunication to the SSPX bishops that were just consecrated, to the priests that are associated with it, and to even some of the lay faithful if they adhere to the tenets that the SSPX puts forward. So, very sad day for the church. Please be praying for the church, that she may become one again. You know, that's what Christ talked about, right? That's what he prayed for to the Father, that we may be one just as, he and the Father are one. So it's a very sad, always sad whenever schism comes about. St. Peter, St. Paul, pray for us. Pray for the church that the schism can be healed fast. Because we want to be one, right? We have a lot of problems in the world right now. The last thing we need is brother infighting. So that's the last thing that we want for the church, right? And for Christianity at large. So we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about Marsha Blackburn refusing to debate. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Governor candidate who gets millions of dollars from allegedly from APAC and big PACs doesn't want to debate. That's crazy. It's almost like, could she be bought off? That's crazy. Who would, allegedly, of course, right? None of this can actually be proven, of course. But yeah, so she's refusing to debate. It's a big story. Got a article in the Daily Beast talking about it. So we're going to go over that as well. Before we start the episode, though, I do want to remind you guys to like and subscribe on YouTube. Also, follow on Rumble. We're streaming there live every night, and we're also on Spotify. So if you guys missed a live show, you can always go listen to it on Spotify. Be sure to go follow. And if you guys do like the content that you see tonight, we are supported only by the Love Jesus Company, which is my company. So the link will be down in the description if you guys want to go support and get a shirt. It's actually fun, man. I'm not going to lie. I like wearing them around. It's a lot of fun. I have a good time with it because, it spreads a good message, right? It shows the love of Christ. It tells people. I was talking about this the other night on the show, that basically, whenever you're walking through with this shirt, maybe that's like an occasion where people can avoid sin, right? Maybe if they see the shirt that says Love Jesus and they're thinking about, lashing out at somebody, or they're thinking about crashing out, maybe they won't crash out. Maybe they won't sin. So maybe they, you never know what somebody's going through. So definitely get yourself a Love Jesus t-shirt. We also have hoodies. If you're a freak and you like to wear hoodies in the heat, we have those as well. So yeah, man, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get straight into our episode. Appreciate you guys watching tonight. Hope you guys are all having a great night tonight. So yeah, our first story right here, I have it on the screen right here for us. This is from Mario Nafal on X. He says, Pope Leo XIV just excommunicated the entire Society of St. Pius X. Not just the 4 bishops ordained without papal approval on Wednesday, but the 2 bishops who performed the ceremony, all SSPX priests, and any lay members who formally adhere to the group. The SSPX has been a thorn in Rome's side since Archbishop Lefebvre founded it in 1970 in opposition to the Second Vatican Council's reforms. The shift to Mass and local languages, the embrace of religious freedom, ecumenism, and crucially, the condemnation of anti-Semitism. They never accepted any of it and have been operating in a kind of canonical gray zone for decades until Leo decided the gray zone was over. One of the newly ordained American bishops called the mainstream Catholic Church a modernist desert that kills everything it touches hours after the ceremony. Leo hasn't commented publicly, but the decree really says everything. And then obviously down here in the replies, we have a bunch of people giving their takes on it. Like I said, man, it's a sad day for the church overall. And if there's one piece of, if there's anything I could leave you guys off with first, it's this. It's that we need to be praying for the church, right? That's ultimately what we need to do. We need to pray that Christ's body would become one again, right? Schism is obviously terrible. And it's not desired whatsoever, right? So the schism needs to be healed. Secondly, if you guys aren't kind of aware, if you don't really know anything about Catholicism, if you guys don't know, you might be asking yourself, what is the SSPX? What does it even mean, right? What does the SSPX even mean? What is that? It's like, what is that in Catholicism? Well, so like I said here in the article, the SSPX was founded in 1970. It was opposed to what they perceived to be errors in the Second Vatican Council. These things were also like the article lays out here, or the tweet, I guess I should say, lays out here, things like religious freedom, ecumenism, right, being friendly with other religions and things like that. And there's 2 other pillars too. But basically those are kind of the main concerns that these priests, these bishops had after the Second Vatican Council. So there was an archbishop who founded this priestly society, and he wanted to fight back against that. And so basically, I believe it was in the 1980s. I could be wrong about the date. And again, I want to preface this too. Also, fact check everything I'm saying because I'm still researching a lot of this stuff. Right, I'm still fairly new to some of this stuff, but I'm just telling you guys from my perspective how I kind of perceive the whole situation. So definitely fact check. Definitely go in and do your own research on this stuff. But basically, Archbishop Lefebvre consecrated 4 bishops without papal approval back in, I believe it was the 1980s, right? And they were considered, excommunicated. And then they were kind of in a canonical gray zone, like the article stated, for a while, right? It wasn't until Pope Benedict came around and lifted the excommunication that said that they were invalid and that they were not correct. And so then they were not formally in schism anymore until yesterday, whenever they decided to consecrate the 4 bishops. Now, here's the problem for me, okay? And like I said, I'm still kind of, working a lot of this out, right? I'm still kind of new to a lot of this, right? I'm only 2 years in the church, so, I'm still kind of working all this out. So I'm just telling you guys honestly what I think. Again, double check everything I'm saying, come to your own conclusions about this stuff. But here's just kind of my perspective on it. I'm torn. I'm torn, man. It sucks because on one hand, it's like I disagree with the SSPX on a few different issues, okay? I really do. I disagree with them on, their position on Vatican II. I think that Vatican II Vatican II is a church council for those of you guys who aren't aware. I think Vatican II can actually be read in light of tradition, right? I think that the text, albeit was weaponized, I think, in whenever they were formalizing this text during the council, whenever they were kind of putting it together and deciding, okay, like what do we want to put in the text at this council, right? I think a lot of that was how do I say this? Had purposeful ambiguity in it in order to get their agenda across, right? In order to essentially try to subvert the Catholic Church. Okay, that was the main goal of some of these players in Vatican II, right? And this is well documented. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is well documented, all right? Obviously, not every bishop in that was, a part of that. Obviously, not every player in Vatican II had bad intentions, but there were bad players in Vatican II that purposely tried to subvert church teaching, okay? So, but regardless, I do believe in the Holy Spirit's promise to preserve the church, right? Preserve her from error. And so I think in light of this, and I think just even reading the documents, right? If even a person, if they weren't Catholic and they read these documents and they saw kind of what the documents are saying, I don't think it would be that controversial, to be quite frank with you. And I have these conversations with people all the time. Had a conversation about this on the phone earlier today where I was defending the Vatican II documents, right? So I think they can be read with historical continuity. I don't think they're necessarily flawed. I don't think they're necessarily error. Like I said, they have some ambiguity in them that was weaponized, I believe. But it's still a valid document. It's still a valid council. And so I think the Vatican needs to come out and clarify that and say, hey, right, like here are the things, here is what this actually means, right? Here's the clarifications you can actually, for the traditionalists out there, you can interpret this with a historical lens, right? With a continuity in the church. You can, in fact, do that. And I think that would clear up a lot of the confusion that these more traditionalist groups have, right? There's groups like the FSSP, who is another traditionalist group that likes to celebrate the traditional Latin Mass, that accepts Vatican II, right? They kind of have my position on it. So that's one of the things I disagree with them about also. Here's the problem. Here's where the problem really comes in for me, though, is that I really do enjoy the Latin Mass, right? And so in my diocese, we had 3 Latin Mass parishes. And recently, the bishop decided to get rid of all of them, right? You still have the Latin Mass and the Novus Ordo, but it's not the same as the traditional Latin Mass, okay? There's something about the traditional Latin Mass, right? The Mass of the Ages, as some would say, that's special, right? And I want to preface this. I don't think that the Novus Ordo being, basically, if you go into any Catholic church now, you're going to see what's called a Novus Ordo Mass, okay? This is the service that was promulgated after the Second Vatican Council, okay? So some more traditional parishes you might go into, and they'll have what's called a traditional Latin Mass, right, which is the Mass that we used for a long time in the Catholic Church. And then you have the Novus Ordo, which was promulgated after the Second Vatican Council and is a little bit different from the traditional Latin Mass, okay? So I'm just clarifying this for all the people who aren't Catholic out there who kind of want to get a glimpse of what I'm talking about that maybe don't understand this, right? So I want to make this very clear from the outset. I actually think that the Novus Ordo is valid. Okay, I think the Novus Ordo is a valid mass. I think the Novus Ordo can actually be pretty reverent. I'm not going to lie. One of the most reverent masses I've ever been to was a Novus Ordo, okay, in Georgia. It was a very beautiful Novus Ordo parish. It was a very beautiful Novus Ordo mass. It was very reverent. It was done correctly. It was great. It was good. So I don't have anything against Novus Ordo, okay? I really don't. And that might be a place where I disagree also with the SSPX, okay? Obviously, no hate to anybody, in either of these sides, but it's just my personal opinion, right? Now, with that being said, do I enjoy the traditional Latin Mass? Yes, I think it's beautiful. I think it has a lot of historicity to it. I think it's naturally beautiful. I think that you get a lot of graces from that Mass, right? I think that spiritually it benefits you. However, and that's not to take away from the Novus Ordo, right? Because like I said, that there are beautiful Novus Ordo masses out there. Okay, so it's this hard situation where it's like I want to go to the traditional Latin Mass. I truly do like it, right? I'm not opposed to going to the Novus Ordo, but I prefer the traditional Latin Mass. Okay, but in my diocese, you can't find it. You can't find it unless you go to the SSPX. But now they're excommunicated. So now it's like, what do you do? If you want to find the traditional Latin Mass, you have to drive like 3 hours to another diocese instead of going to the Novus Ordo. Now, like I said, I don't have a problem going to the Novus Ordo. I really don't. I seriously, I do not have a problem going to the Novus Ordo, not one bit. Like I said, the Novus Ordo can be very reverent. The Novus Ordo that I went to for a long time, that I was actually confirmed to the church at, is very reverent. It's a very nice service. However, I do like the traditional Latin Mass, right? And I have been loving the traditional Latin Mass lately, right? So it's this hard situation that now essentially Rome and the SSPX and the schism and the clashing between the two, it's really hard to kind of figure all this out, right? And so I think that there are a couple points I have down here that I think could really clarify this, right? I think one, the Vatican needs to clarify their position on Vatican II. Okay, they need to say, hey, this actually can be read with historical continuity, right? With what the church has always taught. This can be interpreted in that lens. Okay, I think the church needs to come out and say that. Secondly, I think that like Benedict the 14th did whenever he was, or sorry, Benedict the 16th did whenever he was Pope, I think that we need to expand the celebration of the traditional Latin Mass. Okay, I think that we need to have both forms of the same rite. Right. Okay. Rite meaning that, the type of Mass. Okay. So like you have the Western Rite, you have the Eastern Rite in the Catholic Church. Okay. Again, the Novus Ordo and the traditional Latin Mass are not two rites. They're two different forms of the same Western Rite. Okay. So I think that Benedict the 16th, I think rightly did. I think we need to expand that. I think that would solve a lot of tension within these dioceses. Okay. Thirdly, I think that there is an argument to be made that Pope Leo could have, allowed the SSPX to do what they do. And, he might not have liked it, but in theory, he could have just said, hey, here is the, he could have approved the papal mandate, basically. He could have approved them consecrating the bishops, and it would have avoided schism. But for whatever reason, and like I said, I'm still looking into all this, he didn't do it, right? He didn't do it. He had the ability to, approve these bishops to be consecrated, but he didn't do it for whatever reason, right? So I think that that's one thing there that could have happened. Again, like I said, do your own research, come to your own conclusions. But from my perspective, that is one thing that could have happened that could have avoided a lot of this, right? And then also, here's the last point is if we're going to go after the SSPX, right, for being schismatic as declared today by Pope Leo, we also need to go after the Vatican needs to come down pretty hard on the, somebody like the German bishops who, for example, who are pushing all the, LGBTQ stuff on Catholics there. I think the Vatican needs to come down hard on, in the same way they're doing with the SSPX, they need to come down hard on those who are celebrating the, LGBTQ masses, right? Which obviously not in line with church teaching, obviously, not in line with church teaching. So I think that there needs to be a certain sense of consistency there, right? If you're going to come after these traditionalist groups for, not being in line with the teaching of the church, well, the teaching of the church also doesn't allow, homosexuals and homosexuality to be celebrated, right? We love these people. We want them to come to the fullness of the faith. However, there is a way to do it, right? You have to repent, right? You can't just, you can't be a homosexual. You can't be, celebrating homosexuality and not just be okay. All right, so I think the Vatican needs to clarify that, and I think if we were fair on that, it would really, I think it would be beneficial to everybody, right? Because it's not only the right thing to do, but I think it would also open a lot of people's eyes and say, hey, maybe Rome actually does have our best interests here. Okay, so I think those are kind of four things we can do, and like I keep saying this entire episode, do your own research, come to your own conclusions. Um, but from my point of view, that's kind of where I'm standing, and it's like for a faithful Catholic like myself, right, which I would consider myself a traditional Catholic, okay. Um, like I said, I have many disagreements with the SSPX. But I also have, some gripes with Rome right now, to be quite frank with you, right? I love the Holy Father, right? He is Pope. Obviously, I'm not denying that he is the Pope, that he's the authority of Pope, right? Because he is the Pope. I'm not denying that whatsoever. But I think that there needs to be, like I just pointed out a second ago, a certain consistency with these positions. Okay, so I don't know, man. It's a tough situation to be in, and like I keep saying, pray for the church, pray for unity, right? Everybody needs to be praying this right here. Everybody needs to be praying the rosary. The rosary, if everybody prayed the rosary, man, literally the world's problems would end, because the grace would be sufficient for us to, finally have the grace to follow God, right? And essentially to love Jesus. Unironically. So it's like, yeah. It just, it's a sad situation in the church. Please pray for the church. And yeah, man, I mean, that's pretty much all I got to say on that. I think, hopefully this can be resolved. We saw it with Pope St. John Paul II, who actually have, right back there, right? He actually was the one who excommunicated all the SSPX bishops back in the 80s, and then Pope Benedict XVI lifted the excommunications, right? So they were invalid, and so forth. So, there obviously is a chance at reconciliation, right? But I think that there just needs to be, there needs to be, right? Like Rome, let me put it like this: Rome is always talking about dialogue, right? The Vatican recently, the Catholic Church has taken this position that we need to have dialogue, right, with those who we disagree with. Okay, which I don't disagree with that. I think it's good to have dialogue. I think it's good to talk with people, obviously, about different positions, and we can hash them out. And it's like the Bible says, iron sharpens iron, right? So I think it's good to have the conversation with people, right? But it's like in that same spirit, let's have that with everybody, okay? Let's not just have that with, having these synods on whether homosexuality or homosexual relations are okay and acceptable in the church, right? Let's actually have dialogue with the, SSPX, some of the more traditionalist groups, right? And let's just not cherry pick who we're going to go after here, And obviously I speak as a layperson, right? I don't speak with, obviously, the authority of a priest or a bishop or anybody authoritative in the Catholic Church, but, and I recognize that. But these are just kind of my thoughts on it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I can read your guys' chats. Let me know what you guys think. Because I think I take a pretty moderate position on it, honestly. And like I said, I'm still researching, but I think I take a pretty moderate, common sense position on this issue, right? It's like I have my disagreements with the SSPX, but I also don't think that everything that Rome is doing right now is okay, right? So it's like it's a tough situation to be in. And I just hope the schism gets resolved very soon. So we're going to go to our next story here. We're going to talk a little bit about Senator Marsha Blackburn, who is running for Tennessee governor right now. Obviously, if you guys have watched any of the podcasts or if you followed my social medias, you know that I am a Monty Fritz supporter. Monty Fritz for governor. Go vote August 6th. Official Love Jesus Company endorsement of Monty Fritz for governor. Okay. But anyways, back on topic. So Daily Beast has this story right here. I'll bring it up for you guys. It says, MAGA senators bid to dodge questions turns into excruciating farce. MAGA Senator Marsha Blackburn suffered an awkward moment as she repeatedly tried to evade a reporter's questions while desperately waiting for an elevator door to open. The Tennessee Republican is the frontrunner in the GOP primary race to become the state's next governor. However, Blackburn is refusing to debate her Republican opponents and has not been giving media interviews to promote her campaign. The team at Tennessee news outlet News Channel 5 approached Blackburn after she spoke at an event to try to get her to answer some basic questions about her run for governor. However, Blackburn essentially stonewalled every question, repeatedly replying, "We're going to talk to Tennesseans every single day," which she hasn't, allegedly, as she waited to escape in an elevator. After being approached by News Channel 5's Ben Hall and videographer Brian Staples, one of the Blackburn aides, suggested she did have the time right now to respond to questions after her gubernatorial debate. Blackburn and that. We're doing a federal event, but thank you very much. So basically, just the story is, Marsha, why are you scared? Why are you? Weren't you the senator that was calling out Joe Biden in 2020 when he was hiding in the basement? Marsha, why are you hiding in the basement now? Marsha, where are you? Marsha, why are you being Joe Biden? Come on, I thought, dude, I thought you were supposed to be MAGA. Marsha, I thought you were supposed to be MAGA. I thought you were supposed to be Trump's advocate. I thought you were supposed to be his #1 advocate, Trump's advocate. And in the same line, you were criticizing Trump's opponent, right? Now you're doing the same thing and you're hiding. Why are you not taking questions? You know, why are you talking to Tennesseans every day? And she's not, allegedly. You know, and I've been on the ground at some of these events where, you know, Marsha Blackburn has said that, you know, we're going to show up, we're going to come, and she doesn't show, right? They have these events where, you know, they'll put the candidate's name on the ballot, and, you know, a lot of the candidates, a lot of times, you know, Marsha Blackburn specifically won't show, won't do a debate, like pointed out here in the article, doesn't want to talk to the constituents, doesn't want to talk to the voters. Is just super shady all the time. What's up with that? That's what is going on with that? And you know, we have the same problem going on in Florida right now with James Fishback. Thankfully, Patrick Bet-David put together a debate today for all the candidates in Florida for their governor's debate. But Marsha, where are you? Why are you not calling for a debate? Right? And the answer is actually simple, right? Obviously, I'm asking these as a rhetorical question, but I think the answer is actually very simple. It's that she can't debate. She doesn't know the issue. She is a puppet. She is a puppet of the people that pay her, allegedly. She is not real, okay? These people, these politicians, these DC politicians, here's what you have to realize. These people are not real human beings. They are not. You know, and it's like I'm not saying they're like aliens. I'm not saying they're like lizard people or anything, but like I am like questioning like the authenticity. Like, where do they find these people at? Like, are they making them like a lab? Are they like AI generated? Like, dude, where are these people coming from? It's like every single one of these people is just so fake. They're so phony. They're not real. A lot of them, you know, claim the name of Christ, but then they'll go on Capitol Hill and do the most egregious things possible sexually, allegedly. So it's allegedly is going to be the word of this episode. So it's like, you know, why exactly? Where are these people coming from, and why exactly is Marsha Blackburn afraid to debate? Right? We want to debate. And quite frankly, I'm not going to lie. If you're running for governor of a state, you should be mandated to debate. That should be pretty common sense. And I don't think that should be a controversial take at all. I don't think it should be controversial that if you want to represent your voters in a state where you're running for governor, that, hey, maybe it might be a good idea to, I don't know, show my positions in front of the voters that vote me in, so they can actually have some sort of idea why they would want to vote for me, right? And of course, like I pointed out, we know why Marsha doesn't want to do that, because she doesn't know the positions. She doesn't have any really ground to stand on. If you look at all of her ads, she's talking about, I'm Trump's biggest supporter. I'm Trump's biggest fan. Just glazing Trump all the time, nonstop. And that's the only thing that she's ran on this entire campaign. And now somebody like Marsha Blackburn, she came out in favor of AI data centers. What's that all about? And furthermore, what's going on with MAGA? You know, this has been a problem, and I haven't got a chance to really touch on this because our podcast is still fairly new, right? I had a podcast a long time ago where we touched on this, and I was starting to notice this theme, right? Obviously, I voted for Trump in 2024, but I was under the impression that we were going to get mass deportations. Where are those at? I was under the impression that the economy was going to get fixed. Where is that at? I was under the impression that we weren't going to get any new foreign wars. Where was that at? All of the things that we were promised did not happen. We got scammed, right? And that's why I'm telling you guys, all of these people are fake. They're not real. They are not real people. They are fake. They are AI. They are AI generated. They are not real people. I promise you guys. And again, you guys already know this. I'm sure you guys know this about politicians, but it's like you just listen to them talk and they're not there. There's just something about them that you're like, that's off. That's weird. And, you know, I'm just going to say, like, even for somebody like James Fishback, you know, I love the guy. But I hate this, like, kind of like politician, you know, thing he does, like, whenever he talks, right? That's why I like somebody like Monty. He's just very real. He's very blunt about stuff, right? And obviously he's very charitable. He's very nice. But, you know, Monty just doesn't have this, like, politician feel to him. He just feels like a real dude. And, you know, James Fishback, obviously I love him. And I support him for Florida governor. I hope he wins. But he does have sort of like this like politician, feel to him. Obviously, I don't think that James Fishback is a politician, but whenever he talks, he has that kind of like he gives off like that kind of vibe. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that we need to, we need to start supporting Christian candidates who will put Christ back in the government. We need to start supporting candidates who will preserve what God has created on this beautiful earth for us and not vouch to replace it with AI data centers. Obviously, duh. We need to vote for candidates who will actually care about the constituents, who will, uphold the dignity of the citizens, right, and not sell it out to foreign interest. And I think whenever you look at these different pillars, it's very clear that Marsha Blackburn, that's the reason why she won't debate, is because she's in favor of all of these things that I just listed. She's in favor of the antithetical to all these things that I just listed, right? She's for AI data centers, right? She's probably not for a form of Christian nationalism, right? She's probably for a friendly to the idea that, oh, well, everybody can just have their own religion and it's okay and, it's not a big deal and we'll just let them do this and then do that. And it's like, no, like at the end of the day, Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. And it's not actually that, it's actually not charitable to allow people just to, oh, okay, well, we're just going to allow you to practice your religion and that's totally okay, right? Now, obviously, with that being said, do I believe in, some sort of, light, like religious tolerance? Yes, okay. However, I think that there does need to be a distinction between, a certain religious tolerance and telling people that it's okay to worship a false god. Okay, there's a very clear distinction between the two. Okay, so it's like, we can tolerate, people, celebrating their religion, right, in private, right, and there's certain, factions, what they want to do. But I think as far as public religion goes, as far as, what the state should endorse, it needs to be Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ only. And, that might be a controversial take. It's just true, though. It's true, objectively. So, and like I said, this is not, it's not mean to these people. It's actually very charitable to them, right? We want them to come to the fullness of the faith. We want them to, love Jesus, right? That's the whole goal. That's the whole reason this company was started, right? We want people to know the love of Christ. We want people to know Jesus. And it's actually not charitable to just allow people to go in error and not say anything about it, right? And it's actually not charitable to, promote politicians like Marsha Blackburn that are not in favor of some sort of Christian nationalism, okay? That are just kind of apathetic to putting Christian values and Christian ideology into the government, and not just being friendly to Christianity, but actually implementing true Christian principles into the government. There is a difference, because a lot of these politicians, they'll say, hey, I'm in favor of Christianity. I love Jesus, right? But what does that say about them? That's a personal statement, right? We want statements that, hey, you know what? We're gonna declare Christ the King of the state. Christ is the King of America. Okay, we're gonna declare it as such. And and honestly, there needs to be a federal holiday for Christ the King. To properly celebrate, or a sacred, a federal holiday, maybe for the Sacred Heart of Jesus or some of these very holy devotionals. So I think that we need to really start rooting for politicians who are going to put Christ back in the government. Okay. So that's that. I just wanted to touch on this story because it's so interesting, that these people, they don't want to debate ever. They always just kind of want to hide. And, when push comes to shove, they don't want to talk about the real issues. They don't want to talk about what's really going on. They don't want to talk about, they don't want to face the voters, is what it comes down to, because they're scared. Because they're scared and they don't know the positions, actually. And because a lot of them are paid, quite frankly. And because they are not real people, like I keep saying. So, but yeah. So that's kind of our story here. And, obviously, like I said, I'm in favor of Monty Fritz. John Rose is running as well. I just don't, if you just listen to John Rose, he has that politician voice, that sort of politician charisma to him, if you will, right? John Rose is a very odd creature. I'm not going to rip too hard into him on this podcast because, quite frankly, I don't think he's really relevant to what we're talking about. We're talking about the real candidates here, okay? We're talking about Monty Fritz and Marsha Blackburn, okay? We're talking about the real candidates, okay? We don't have time for these third-party candidates, all right? We don't have time for these nobodies like John Rose, right? That we don't have time for them, okay? We're focused on the real issues here, okay? We're focused on Monty Fritz beating Marsha Blackburn and winning the governorship in the state of Tennessee. So that's what I'm focused on. People can waste their time with John Rose, but Me personally, I'm focused on getting Monty Fritz to the governor's mansion in Tennessee, and putting Christ back in government, putting the rule of Christ back in public life, back in society, like the way it was. And just to continue down on this point a little bit, everybody thinks, oh well, how is he supposed to do that? How is he supposed to implement Christian ideology into Tennessee if the Constitution says you can't? And here's the problem: the Constitution actually doesn't say that. You've been lied to. Actually, you've been lied to that the Constitution does not allow for public public churches, right, or like state churches rather. You've been lied to about that, because at the time of the ratification of the Constitution, like I was talking to Carson Carpenter about this, at the time of the ratification of the Constitution, the individual states still had state churches, right? The clause of freedom of religion of Congress, quote, Congress shall make no law, right? Talking about like religion and stuff like that. That means Congress, okay? It doesn't mean the states. It doesn't mean the states cannot have state churches. Obviously, like I said, after the ratification of the Constitution, there were states that had Christian churches, and they were the official state church of that state. So we need to get back to that. We need to get back to the idea of Christian nationalism. We need to get back to the idea of subsidiarity. Subsidiarity meaning local rule, right? Local municipalities. We need to get away from this idea of big government in our system. We need to, like I keep saying, we need to reinstall in our government the social kingship of Christ, right? That is an essential pillar. And I don't think there's room for compromise on that. There's really not, And like I said, we can be tolerant to a certain degree with, intolerance. Understand what I'm saying by that, right? I'm not saying that we need to just be okay with everybody and be apathetic towards them. I'm saying we can have a certain understanding of where they come from and have a certain allowance of them, practicing their, quite frankly, to be blunt, their false religion, which is true. We can be understanding of that, and we can be tolerant of that in the correct sense. But as far as the state goes, and as far as public policy goes in life, we need to be very clear that it is Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ only. Okay, so that needs to be the standard, and we need to start talking about that. And obviously, I'm going to keep hammering down on that point on this podcast any chance I get, because it's huge. It's important. It's like Christ is the King of the universe, and obviously, I want His rule instituted in public life. Duh. Why would you not? Why would you not want God inserted in the government? That makes no sense to me. Why? Why would you not want the one true God, the true God in whom goodness, beauty, and truth is rooted? Why would you not want that in government? And furthermore, if it's not rooted in government, what do you think it's going to be replaced with? If God is goodness, beauty, and truth, what do you think that's going to be replaced with when we take God out of society? And the answer is you see it right now. The answer is you actually see it right now in society. What happens when you take God, more specifically Jesus Christ, out of government and out of public life and out of the schools? You see what happens. You see how everything denigrates. You see how it all goes down. It all goes to crap, quite frankly, to the point to where people become nihilistic, right? And you have suicide rates out the wazoo. You have freaking SSRI usage going up like crazy, and you have depression, anxiety, and things like this going out of control. And people ask themselves like, well, what could be causing this, right? Like, well, it's got to be it's got to be natural factors that are causing this, right? And now I will say, I do think that there are actually some natural, things that are causing our hormonal systems to be messed up in the society, right? I think that the foods we eat and stuff like that do play a role in this. However, the spiritual is real. The spiritual is real. Demons are real. Certain demonic forces are at work, in everybody's life, and it is our job to fight against those, right? It reminds me of the Bible passage whenever Cain is really mad at Abel, right? And God tells him, you have these feelings right now, but you must fight against them, right? And that I really feel like that is, you have these feelings of anger, but you must fight against them. And I really feel like that is our calling, right? We are called to fight against our passions in life. We are called to continually to live a life of virtue, right? To live a life filled with Christ, live a life filled that is pleasing to God, right? Don't, because as St. Paul says, adulterers, murderers, thieves, like all of these mortal sins, if you continue in these, right, and you do not repent from them, then you will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. Okay, that's very clear in the Bible. It's very clear in the gospel. Christ talks more about hell than he does heaven. So it should be a wake-up call to us all, right? And, whenever I'm talking about, repenting of sin, it's like I'm not just pointing at somebody else, I'm also pointing at myself, right? Because each and every one of us have to repent of our individual sins. We have to make reparation for that. You need to go to confession for that, right? You need to get in the life of the church immediately. You need to find your local Catholic church, get involved, go to mass every Sunday, right? These are the things that we need to be doing. We need to be focusing on and prioritizing, and that will flow into every aspect of your life, right? If your spiritual life is not in order, you can't expect your mental health or your physical health to, quite frankly, be in order, right? In the proper way that it needs to be. And you truly won't feel joy until those spiritual needs are felt. So, anyways, long-winded way to say, Marsha Blackburn, why won't you debate? But no, I still don't know how I got off on that tangent, but it's so true though. It's so true. I feel like that message is needed now more than ever. And obviously I say that with a Love Jesus shirt on and Love Jesus right here and also down here on the screen. But it's true, and we need to get the point across that, the key to the modern era is to love Jesus. That is the main message. If you don't take anything else away from that, it is put Jesus Christ first in your life. That is what you need to take away from all of this, right? From any episode I do, from anything we talked about this episode, quite frankly, right? It's love Jesus Christ. And if you can just do that, if you can just love God with all your heart, your soul, and with all your mind, with all your strength, as the greatest commandment, everything will flow from that, right? That needs to be our main goal. It needs to be our focus. So, and that's why I love the phrase love Jesus. It's simple. It gets the point across, and it's very beautiful. So, but like I said, if you guys have any chats, be sure to post it down in the chat. We are live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every night at around probably 8 or 9 p.m., sometimes 10 p.m. We actually have a lot of exciting guests coming on, though. I'm excited. Next week, we have a very special guest. He's going to be joining us. I'm going to get flamed from Israel, out of all places, right? Joining us from Israel. So, but no, I say that tongue-in-cheek. He's actually a really good dude. And he's going to come on and expose kind of what's happening in Israel right now to the Christians over there. A lot of people don't know the Christian persecution is crazy over there right now. And we're going to talk about that, right? We're going to have him on. We're going to expose these things. We're going to be transparent about it and what's really going on in the Holy Land right now. As far as the whole situation with Israel goes, and how they're treating some of the people, some of the Christians, some of the Catholics over there. So we're going to be talking with him next week. We also have a very special guest on that has been doing a lot of reporting on the ground. So we're going to have him on as well. And also, if you guys have any special guests or anybody in mind that you want me to bring on, please list them down below. Again, I don't want this just to be a political show. I want it to be a well-rounded show, right? So we're going to be talking about Christianity. We're going to be talking about politics. And we're also going to be talking about culture, right? And pretty much just anything that interests me. So, like I said, some very exciting guests coming on next week. And, just stay tuned. And so with that, we have the shows Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then along with that, we will have, I want to start doing some gaming streams on Twitch. So I have the link down below if you guys want to go check those out. If you guys want to go follow me on Twitch, you're more than welcome to do that. It's twitch.tv/truechannel. We're going to be playing some games, probably play some Minecraft, some Fortnite, things like that over on Twitch. So yeah, man, I appreciate you guys watching tonight. And again, these episodes are just getting started, man. So stay tuned. We have a lot of exciting things in the works. I'm very excited for the future of this company and this podcast. So God bless you all. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on Rumble. We're on Rumble now. So if, I get too far into talking about the truth and YouTube decides to ban, we have a backup. And also be sure to go follow on Spotify. You can listen audio, video, have it both posted there. And then last but not least, go to lovejesus.com, lovejesuscompany.com, and get yourself a t-shirt. We have some beautiful t-shirts on there. I'll pull it up right here for you guys real quick. lovejesuscompany.com right here. Be sure to go check it out, guys. We have some beautiful merch here, as you guys can see on the screen right now. We have some shirts right here. We have some sweatshirts. Like I said, if you guys are freaks and you like to wear sweatshirts in this like 90-degree heat, we have them for you. If you're just mentally deranged, if you're just sick in the head and you like to wear sweatshirts in summer, we have it for you. We got it. But no, we also have some stickers here for you if you like some stickers as well. And also don't forget to go follow the Substack. I'm going to start posting some articles on there. So if you guys enjoy Substack, if you guys enjoy reading, going to be talking about kind of the situation of the church and everything. Going to be doing some writing on there. So appreciate you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. God bless you all. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. And God bless. May Christ be glorified.